Okay, welcome back then. Late January 1859, and I did decide to do one in January in the end because there's been a few developments that sort of are worth reporting on. I should preamble this video by saying that I'm pretty under the weather at the moment. I'm sort of been bedbound with either flu or coronavirus, one or the other. But yeah, I'm pretty ropey. So if in this video I don't sound terribly animated or I'm at times coughing and spluttering, apologies in advance, sort of thing. Now, it's been a good sort of period since we last left off. Economically, things have been really, really good. And I mean, the kind of plan to sort of export arms, military supply munitions has really paid off and is adding a nice kind of boost to our exports. And exports have actually sustained this time. They've really sustained fairly high, and it's a mixture of things for manufactured goods, to the point now that we're actually trying to hold manufactured goods quickly back because they're being exported more quickly in a great enough quantity that it's actually putting a little bit of strain on our capacity to supply manufactured goods. That's a first, actually, for us. And also domestic consumption is beginning to drive up. But this is being kind of offset a bit by ammunition and military supply, and also by other things like textiles. Again, textiles is a thing that we're actually struggling to meet domestic demand now. There's only a small amount of surplus, so at some point we're going to have to choke off a lot of these exports until we can kind of make up really the shortfall in production. It's not quite a shortfall yet. It's only a shortfall in terms of meeting export demand as well as domestic demand. And of course, export demand is much more kind of fluid. It fluctuates more. Tobacco is really consistent as we thought it would be some 9 years ago now, and that's really, really paid off. And also a range of kind of the kind of agricultural goods. Of course, we began this decade with expanding our agricultural base precisely so that we would always have a range of kind of agricultural goods that are available in the domestic market, which is good for kind of satisfaction, but also for export. So really, really good. And if we look at like national market sales, 108 for about 385, that's fairly consistent now, and that's really nice to see. So the economy is kind of palpably larger. It's we're in a different kind of, I feel like we're in a different era altogether, really. I mean, our economy is going to be more than twice the size it was in 1850. And exports 66 at 234. I think about a month ago we sort of shifted something like 80 merchandises for something like 280. It was really nice to see. I think that's a record. Yeah, kind of eyes bulged out when I saw that. So yeah, the economy is trundling along nicely in terms of economic development. Now, as I mentioned before, we do have railroads in Ankara and, this is the problem, isn't it? Ankara and Zonderlag. It's just not visible on the map for whatever reason. We've got lines going down in Sinop, 60 days remaining there. Trabzon 120. We've begun building the bridge and the line towards Erzurum. This is quite expensive. The cost of laying railroad is variable. It's variable even subject to things like weather. It's like the time of year that you begin building it, which is amazing. But it's variable based on the terrain and this kind of thing. And of course, crossing bridges is very expensive. So this is really expensive. This costs something like 1,200, I think, a bridge and then a railroad into kind of pretty tough terrain. So an expensive section. That's going to be expanded towards Kars, and then we're going to branch off a line down towards Van, as I mentioned in an earlier video, to look to partly as a military exercise to kind of connect up the eastern frontier so we can quickly freight forces from the kind of center of power really to the eastern frontier, but also really to exploit these kind of iron deposits that we have prospected there. So that's the economy. Now the foreign developments are really interesting. The first one is, and it's just happened this term, is Romania has formed. Wallachia, whatever it's called, and Moldova have united. I think in real life, this nation was formed in 81. I don't know if it's kind of existed in some de facto form prior to that. I don't know. Okay, in 1859, the Principality united. Okay, right, yeah. So this actually, if I read this, it qualifies what's happening. So I thought it might have been a bug or something, but no. In actual fact, it sort of existed in some kind of de facto form, and then the Kingdom of Romania was formally established in 1881. But that's interesting. In terms of our relations with Romania, I think let's have a look. I mean, they're not going to be great, but let's have a. I think it falls under Moldova. Yeah, the flag is the Romanian flag, isn't it? Let's just check there's nothing under Romania. That may change. Possibly that changes in 81 or something. No, it's okay. What's going on? No. Moldavia, I beg your pardon. So anyway, that's sort of, I'm assuming it's the royal house of Moldavia that unites the territories. I would have assumed it was the other way around. The base of power was in it's the south, sort of around Bucharest. Though that may just be a feature of the game, though, for whatever reason. But anyway, so that's the first one. The other are the kind of two significant European wars. Now, I should point out that these are economically benefiting us. If we look at our exports of munitions and munitions and also military supply, they are to powers that are involved in war. So Piedmont, Sardinia, Prussia, which is fighting France, Austria, and Piedmont, Sardinia again, or Sardinia, Piedmont. So we're shifting munitions and military supply to kind of powers that are engaged in conflicts. We've also sold some to France. It's looking like Prussia really kind of fouled up. They just pushed too early. I guess I don't know who their leader is at the moment, but I don't think they have the benefit of kind of the genius of Bismarck just yet. Let's have a look at major powers, Prussia. And no, they don't have Bismarck yet as their minister-president. And they're just not in a position where they can quite challenge France yet. Their initial invasion, which was quite promising, it got to the kind of the Seine, has been rolled back. All the territories have been recaptured, and France is now in Cologne, in the Rhineland. So we'll see what happens there. But that's an embarrassment for the Prussians, and may even set back prospects for German unification. Probably would have preferred the opposite to happen. In northern Italy, Austria still really holds all the cards. They hold on to Genoa. They control the territory around Torino or Turin, and it looks like they're doing less well in Alessandria. But for the most part, it looks like northern Italy's under wraps, and it looks like, even though they were devastated in the last war with us, they still have a large enough standing army. And what they're doing in northern Italy appears to be with at least one arm tied behind their back, because they still have substantial forces around the Bosnian Eliat. So we'll keep an eye on that. And I can't imagine they would be so deluded to think they can kind of go again with us. It may be that the success in Italy encourages them to make some kind of miscalculation, but we'll keep an eye on the situation. And I think probably next time we won't be quite so nice, sort of thing. We won't be gentle like we were last time. Next time we will look to, if they declare war especially, we will look to break up. We'll look for a long-term occupation of the capital, and we would look to probably try and get a kind of liberated Hungary or something like that. We look to kind of begin to dismember the empire. That's it in terms of foreign policy. The only other thing is it looks like the kind of Indian rebellion is beginning to kind of calm down. There's still signs of some territories that are controlled by rebels, but there's less kind of indication of significant battles, and I'm getting the impression the British are kind of restoring their position in northern India. We should keep that in mind. That means that Britain might be more available they might be interested in what's happening elsewhere. Also, that's not always good. It means they might take more of an interest in territories that they do actually have claims on. For example, the Persian Gulf territories. We are moving to increase our colonial penetration here with a view to push for full colonial status. Actually, once they have full colonial status, there's nothing the British can do. It's a kind of fait accompli. We're doing the same in the Hejaz, and we're going to be looking to do the same in Kuwait. Also, and Kuwait is still only a protectorate. The situation in Yemen is relatively stable. We're moving our force south from Hadramaut. We've got a kind of a military expedition which is facilitated by a militia brigade that we have based in Sana'a, and that force is facilitating an expedition against the local populace with a view to reducing revolt risk. We're going to be looking to do this elsewhere. These things aren't guaranteed when you place them. There's a kind of probability they will fail for whatever reason. Maybe you move into a village, or your troops conduct an expedition, and for whatever reason it just doesn't happen. It isn't successful. The outcome isn't what was expected. So it's not a guaranteed thing, but it's a fairly high probability that it will come off. We've conducted our first anti-piracy maritime patrol just off the coast of Oman, and it was successful. There we go. Didn't even take any hits by the looks of it. These were DAOs or DOs, Gulf pirates. I don't know what they have in the way of gun armament, but they didn't even have any hits, and that was nice and easily done. That's good, so we're going to keep that up and sort of police the seas around the Arabian Peninsula, which we're going to take much more of a responsibility for. Get these boys back into Basra. For the time being, the other interesting military development is we have access to a new commander who just spawned. Now, his name is Mehmed Ali Pasha. He is not a generic commander. He doesn't have a kind of generic portrait, and he has certain kinds of distinctive features and abilities. One is that he's an open order tactician, so this general forms his regiments into small units capable of independent action, +1 initiative and plus 10% firepower for all elements in the unit the general is attached to, if active. So if we give him command of a corps, for example, that would be very good indeed. The other thing is diplomatic, ×2. This means that he would have a fairly generous command point allotment, fairly significant, probably more than any other general that we have. So once he becomes a 3-star general, if he lives long enough and he is able to acquire the experience that we can promote him, he'll be a very formidable general indeed, and is going to be a candidate really for kind of maybe a future star, a star of the 1860s of the Ottoman army. We're going to place him, I think, probably with Omar Pasha's force. I think probably that's the best tutelage he can be given, and he'd probably be given command of the Imperial Guard in the event of hostilities breaking out. We have 2 additional commanders here we can give command of the additional infantry corps to. So that's an interesting development, and we'll keep an eye on any other kind of officers that might be kind of recruited. Now the other theatre that we're taking an interest in, of course, is the island of Sumatra. We're really developing our commercial position here, and we're getting really good colonial penetration fairly consistently throughout the island, but more so, of course, in the kind of north-west. We've got 35% now in Asia, which actually surpasses Dutch penetration, which is about 31%. So we're the dominant outside power here. Now the Dutch do have a colonial fort here, but that's it really. Beyond that, we have the commercial presence, we have the mission on the ground, so we're winning the hearts and minds. And I mean, this is less the case with Sibolga, although we have 24 colonial penetration there. Medan with Gear Trade Post and Mission, so we're well placed to actually surpass the Dutch. The real area we have a problem with is the colonial capital, Palembang, because the Dutch already have the kind of colonial infrastructure. I don't know if it begins like this in 1850, that maybe this kind of enclave is like a legacy of their early modern holdings, as is I guess sort of Java and some of the other territories, and that they're kind of expanding their position from this enclave to try and consolidate the rest of the island. But we do need to figure out ways of raising our colonial penetration without establishing permanent structures, because the Dutch kind of already have that in place. So we've got colonial merchants operating. We're not going to be able to, that's not going to sprawl into a permanent trading position, because the Dutch already have that. They've kind of got a monopoly on sort of timber trade with with the kind of locals. But we are going to be running a kind of local chief bribing operations there also, just to try and drive up the colonial penetration. That's going to be a long-term kind of prospect, and because it is only an influenced territory, if we placed military forces in this region, it would incur possibly a kind of infringement casus belli from the Dutch, but we would be within our rights to do it. We're not kind of, it would not be the same as if we were landing military forces in Dutch territory, which we would not be allowed to do. That would not be permissible unless we declared war on them. So it would upset them, but we wouldn't be breaking any kind of rules. This is merely an influenced territory. This area is nominally under the, it's under the leadership of whatever the local tribal chiefs are, the Sultan of Aceh, or I've just realised that Jambi is no longer controlled by the British. That's interesting. And we've got a colonial fortress being built there, so that'll give us a bit of colonial interest and give us a bit of colonial control. We've got mission and trade post here as well, so we've got some access to tobacco, which is good to see. Obviously, we're a big tobacco-producing nation anyway. So yeah, we're keeping an eye on this. It's a bit of a pet project for the 1860s. It's a nice ahistorical kind of project. It'll boost our economy. It's lucrative. It's utterly worthwhile doing this, and we'll kind of pay sort of long-term dividends, I think. Hajez also, we're looking at long-term, raise the kind of colonial penetration. We're doing this through bribing operations for the most part. I think we've built roads now through most of the territory. This territory is no longer comprised of tracks, so it's kind of a long-term thing, and that's raised the penetration to an extent, but we need more. We need more. And once we get to and we've got 55 already in Medina. I think once the remaining territories sit at around 40, then we'll be in a position for formal colonization. And again, if we could do that by 65, I'd say that's less doable. So it'd be 40. And also, you know, the Persian Gulf kind of holdings, protectorates as they are now, this is achievable in a much shorter time frame. I think we could probably do this within the next year or two, move for full colonial status. And despite the fact that we've expanded our army significantly, you know, we're comfortably paying the upkeep. It doesn't feel like there's any kind of strain on our economy or anything like this. So that's really, really good. Yeah, and I think that's it. I think for the most part that's it. Next video, it's a fairly brief video, I guess, but as I said, I'm feeling rather under the weather, and there's not a huge amount to report on, but I thought the thing is, if I leave this till April, I'll probably just forget things like the fact that Romania has been formed, and someone might clock that, you know, 5 years from now, you know, oh, Romania exists, when did that happen, sort of thing. So I thought it's worth reporting on whilst it happens, and access to new command and so on. So next video, I guess, will be around maybe April time, April 59, and yeah, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching this video.